Okay, so I wanted to begin by sort of explaining how last year we got a chance to talk at the start of the WNBA season. This year we're catching up again, but it's under a lot less buoyant circumstances, I think. Because after a series of deaths among the Black community in the past few months in America, um, including but not limited to Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered while out jogging, Breonna Taylor, who was shot by the police, and George Floyd, who died after being beaten by the police and then laid on the ground, unable to move because a policeman had his knee on his neck. George died shortly after. So it's been an emotional week. I've been tired, and I'm a white guy in the UK. As a Black American, Coach James Wade, how are you? How are you?
I mean, it's been tough for me, just because, for one, this is something that has been, ongoing, and we've seen images, but this image it touched a lot of people. Because we've seen where the "I can't breathe" came about from Eric Garner. It was like, okay, I can't breathe, and it's really something that's ingrained in how we've been treated. Where they're aggressive with us to the point where you can't breathe, you can't move. And you to hear that again in the same form, and to actually see him become unresponsive, so tough to watch, because every Black American is either going to see themselves on the ground in that scenario, or see someone they loved on the ground in that scenario. And it's just a tough pill to digest, because this is something that has been going on for a long time, and it has to get to this point for people to say something about it. Like, it has to actually be recorded, seen, for your voices to be heard. Like, people have to see it. Like, I couldn't go to somebody and say, "Hey, look, I was, beat up by the police." It's just sometimes it's going to fall on dead ears. So it's just a shame that we have to be in a situation where you have to see somebody has to lose their life unjustly for it to become a thing to society. It's always been a thing in our community, but to society it hasn't, and I think that's the shame in it.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think people are starting to realize, whether you're white, Black, Asian, whatever, is that it has always been there for the Black community, especially in the United States. And I think Will Smith, a quote by Will Smith went viral a few days ago about how racism has always been there, but it's just now being recorded, which is obviously a good thing that it's being recorded and highlighted, but it's still there.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but it's another person, a black person, a Black transgender man was fatally shot also. Tony McDade, out of the names that you've given in this short time of confinement, like, so it's something that, but you don't have video of it, so you're not going to really take it in like when you see George Floyd, and that's when you were calling off names. Just imagine that's 4 names that I've included. Tony McDade. That's 4 names that you say these people could have been here if proper procedures were taken. And these things matter. Like you know, you don't want to say, hey, Black Lives Matter, because it's so cliche. It's so like when they say it, but it's really like, you got to understand the depth of what they're saying. And it's like, we say it so much that sometimes if their fears, oh, that's just the same. No, it really is a thing. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had to get that name out because everybody matters.
No, I'm glad that you did, because you know there have been so many that I think I'm not going to be able to name in this short time, but
Sure.
you know, I think that's one of the messages that has really hit home for me in following this past week, is that you know you must say their names, you must keep them alive, at least in your thoughts, you know, and make sure that they didn't die absolutely in vain, that you know, their messages and their stories can be told still. So thank you for bringing that up. I I was keen to get you on because I saw your video on Twitter the other day, where you were reflecting, you reflected on trust a little bit. You told a story about how you were with your son in the park, and you know, you're someone who's spent, obviously you're head coach of Chicago Sky now, but you've previously spent time in Minneapolis in your career. Um, you it must be very difficult to have trust in the law enforcement in the United States. I don't know what that is about or what that's like. So I was wondering if you could try to explain that a little bit, not just in the sort of police force, but in the leadership over there. You know, what is it like to have such little trust and faith in your leaders?
You know, you grow up and you hear stories and you see things, but from a distance. And so, and you see, it's like, oh, this isn't fair. And you see it in your face. You can see your family come into, you know, contact with police and not be treated right. You see your dad being pulled over by a policeman, and, you know, him not talking to him talking to him like he's less than a man. And so it feels you, it feels something in you where, wow, I mean, we're not treated as human beings. And we're not asked to be put on a pedestal, just to be treated equally. That's not a lot. Like, I don't feel that it's a lot to ask for. But I tell you, and I have a story for you. The first time for myself that, and this is something, this is a story that I will have to tell my son, because this is something that me and my family, this is just the first out of a few instances. But my sister she was in high school, my brother was in high school, and I was in college. And I was still at home for the summer, but their school had started. Well, my sister was, she had a job interview. But school ended at 2:15. We had to get her to the job interview by 2:30. So my mom said, hey, you have to go pick up your sister, and you have to pick her up, make sure she doesn't get on the bus, pick her up, take her to the job interview, and then y'all come home after. Well, I pull up into the school, and I pull up into the parents' parking lot that's behind all the buses. Like, it's behind all the buses. And so, and the buses are in between the school and the parking lot. And so as I pull up, I park, parents are waiting. And this is, at the time, this is a high school that was around 75-25 white to black ratio, or white to minority ratio. Let's put it like that, because it was other minorities that were in the school also. And when I pulled up, it was people walking into the school, in and out of school. And so I pull up, I park the car, and so I get out the car to go to the office to tell them to call my sister on the intercom, because she was waiting on me. As soon as I parked the car and I got out of the car, the policeman said, hey, you, get in the car and leave. And I was like, what did I do? And he said, just get in the car have no idea who he thought he was, but who I thought he thought I was. But I was like, hey, look, I have to pick up my sister. He didn't let me talk. He jacked me up, threw me on the car, uh, put me in handcuffs, put his hand around my neck, and dug my head into the car. And by this time, the school was being let out, and kids were everywhere looking through the buses. And I asked him to call the high school coach after, like, it was like police everywhere. I didn't know, and I asked him to call the high school coach, and the high school coach finally came around, and he was like, "What?" And he said, "I know this guy. What did he do wrong?" And I don't even remember what he said because I didn't do anything wrong. And so my sister, she came running out, and she was like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And fortunately, it was a lady, a parent, that was standing right behind me. She was like, he was just standing there. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't doing anything. But by this time, he had jacked me up. He had, the other officer had her hand on her gun, and he said, the coach said, "This is one of my guys. He's a good guy. I don't know what he did, but he shouldn't be in handcuffs." And my sister by that time came out, and I was like, "Could you tell him what I'm doing here?" And she said, "Yeah, he came to pick me up for an interview." And after that, they let me out the handcuffs, and the coach walked me down the hill and talked to me, and he explained to me, he said, "Hey, um, I don't know if this has ever happened to you before." And this was a black coach, and this was a black officer, by just speaking of, just this is a black officer. He was like, "I don't know if this has ever happened to you before, but you'll be okay. This will make you stronger. But these are some of the things that you have to be mindful of. These things are going to happen throughout your lifetime." I couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe it. And that day, I lost my innocence as far as um, the trust to a certain extent. And so I took my sister. It was hard for my sister to get through her interview after seeing that. And when we got home, I was 20 years old. I was 20 years old, and I cried to my mom like a baby. And it's something that stayed with me over 20, 24 years, 25 years. I don't know why it's like that. I don't know why people see me or anybody of my skin complexion as a threat. Um, we make mistakes like everybody else, but I can tell you this: um, having a counterfeit $20 bill, or whatever you can say is wrong, speeding, or you shouldn't be that sentence.
Yeah, I don't fully understand it either. I mean, I'm very privileged in that I've never really had to experience anything like that. But so let me put it to you this way then: what will it take for you to develop trust in leadership in the United States, whether that's at a city level, at a police level, at a town, or at a national level? What needs to change for you?
Well, this is very sad that I say this, but I've come to a realization that things may not change. um, I don't know in my lifetime. Hopefully, in my child's lifetime, what would have to change? Um, I want to say the selfishness and economics of how the system is set up. Uh, right now, it's meant for a certain people to be seen as less than. It's just meant to. It's just the past, sins of our country, and it starts with everybody buying into equality and value of human beings. And I don't know if that interests everyone. Like, I don't know if that's interest. Why would I want to share with you? Why would I want to view you as equal when I don't have to? I don't want you taken out of my pocket. I want my generations to be good. I could care less about yours. And so uh, I am thoroughly discouraged. I'm very discouraged because I've been around for so long and I've seen so much. And people talk about progress. But if you ask anyone, in my situation over the years that I've lived, I haven't seen the progress that it should be, because, I mean, we're still talking about the same things we're talking about when I was a child.
Yeah.
The same things. The only thing is it's being video recorded, and I can tell you, every time I see something like that or hear something like that, it takes a piece of me, a lot of cachet, to actually speak up and say, look, everyone's equal. Everyone counts. Everyone matters. Black people's lives, they do matter. Like, that's because we're not asking for anything. We're just asking just to say, okay, I bleed like you. Like, I'm just like you. It's just that I'm a different pigment. Like, I just think it's elementary, and it's learned. So as future generations continue to come, they're being raised by generations, and it just keeps on going. You've seen the memes of a black and white child running to each other and hugging. My son's best friend is a white kid across the street, and they love each other. This is something that's learned and put into you. So I don't know. I don't have the solutions, but I'm really discouraged and just heartbroken about what I think may continue to just be a recycling wheel.
Well, I hope it's not, because hopefully with the advent of video cameras everywhere and all that, hopefully it will helps create change. But I guess in some ways, seeing the protests turn to riots in some instances, it sort of makes me think about something a few years ago in the UK, because in 2011 in London, Mark Duggan was shot. So it's clear that racism exists in the UK as well. I don't think these mass media moments are as frequent as they are in the US, and I don't think it happens as frequently as in the US, in terms of black people dying at the hands of police. But I'm not in that community, so I don't feel that racism as much as the black community might. But if it doesn't happen as much in the UK, and you've grown up around it in the US, what advice would you say? What advice would you give to, well, people in the United States, young people in the United States, but also young people in the UK as well, that that might be emotionally struggling emotionally with what is going on at present?
Voices of leaders, and I think with the internet and with mass media, as far as we don't have to always go to BBC or CNN or ABC or Fox. Like, our leaders' voices have to be out there, and I think that's one thing that helps out today too, is that we don't have to turn on the TV to actually get news. And I just, I would encourage everybody to get involved. I would just encourage everybody to get involved. I would encourage everybody to vote, from the local levels to the national levels. And I think it's something, and I know I talk about being discouraged. That's just the pessimistic person that I am. But I know it's ways that can change, but it's just going to take buy-in, and it's going to take the masses because believe me, the one thing I can say, and you can see with the protests that are going on, the majority of the U.S., I think, feel this. They feel it. Whether they know how to go about being a part of the solution, I'm not sure. But I can tell you with this younger generation, this generation that has, been exposed to Twitter and all these other social media platforms, they are the catalyst for change. They are the catalyst for change. And you just keep being involved, keep on fighting a good fight, and it can go that way. But right now, and I just, this is how I feel. Our leaders probably need to be the people that aren't as scarred as we are, or aren't as established, and doing things the good old way. And that's, and that's going to take a lot for me to say, we may have to follow a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old who's more open to life, who just came off a university campus where it's so diverse. Like that may be a part of the solution. But that's just the way we have to go. And I just think that, never be afraid to give your voice, never be afraid, no matter how much you think it's against you, like everybody has to speak up, especially when it's wrong. And that's how we start to turn the corner and find solutions.
You're in a position of leadership, obviously, as a basketball head coach. You will have players and staff that look to you for direction, not just on the basketball court, but off it as well. Have you spoken to any of the players on the Chicago Sky, and what did you have to say to them?
Yeah, we had a group meeting last week, and one of my coaches, Bridget Pettis, she played in the WNBA for a long time. She was one of the founding players. She actually, before we can get into anything, she actually brought it up, and so after she left it open for me to just take over, and I talked to them about, how we see how unfair that society is, and how this should touch us all, each and every last one of them, and how we don't always have answers. We don't always have answers, but we can be a part of the solution. So I just encourage them to, keep being who they are, stay vigilant, and try to be the perfect role models, but always keep this with you, how unfair that the world is, and just try to be a part of the solution. Just try to be a part of the solution. Like it was tough because it just happened, and it was an emotional part of phone call for me, because I just saw, my son, and I just saw a man and not being able to help him. Like it was, and so it's tough for everybody. You want to find the right thing to say, and you want to comfort them, but at the same time comforting yourself at the same time, and that's just one of the hardest situations. And one of the toughest parts for me is having to go around the awkwardness of my pain, my hurt, while trying to comfort them. And so I tried, but I don't know how good of a job I did. I don't know, but it's something it's going to stay with me forever. And you hope that it connects to everybody, but you just don't know.
Sports in history has been, it's been a good point of healing in certain situations. So after 9/11, you had President Bush throw out the first pitch at the Yankees. I mean, even going back to the First World War, the Germans played the English in a game of football at Christmas. while that wasn't the end of the war, it was, I guess, it offered a moment of reprieve from those people. How obviously we're all, because this is merged with coronavirus, the NBA and the WNBA hasn't been playing or hasn't started. Do you think the leagues should return under what is currently taking place? And what can basketball do to help heal the country?
I mean, sports has always been a medication for things. Whether, like you said, it's wars, or people can always set aside feelings to compete, or even compete together. And so that's why I love the voices and the, you know, and all the athletes that have spoken up, because people listen, they look up to them, they're role models, whether they want to be or not. And I just appreciate them being able to talk and speak on a high level of what's going on in the community and what's going on in the US and you know, and wherever. But my whole thing is with the pandemic, as you get scientific facts about you know, how we can play in the middle of this. My whole thing has always been about the safety of everyone, safety of players and safety of their family, safety of their friends, safety of whoever's going to be around staff and extended staff. So if it's possible, if something that's possible and it doesn't seem to affect the numbers, and of course you want to play, of course you want to play, but you know that life is the most precious thing, and that's something that, you know, we're talking about today, is that the life of everybody is so precious. So I want to play. I think the players want to play. I think everybody wants to play. But everybody wants to make sure that it's in the right, you know, right environment and the right situation to play. So if that happens, and I think the WNBA is diligently on the road to making that happen, I'm all for it. And as far as sports being medication, I just don't want it to be something that causes amnesia. You know, I want this to be something that continues to bother us, continues to, you know, that's something that I can say about this case in particular. Taylor, and the rest of the people, that Tony McDade, everybody that lost their lives, it's something that, you know, Ahmaud Arbery, it's something that's different about George Floyd, is that the fact that you saw him, you know, distinctively, you could see his face, and you can see him, you know, actually struggling to live. And I think that is something that's going to stay with me. And I just, you want it to stay with everyone, so everybody can be motivated to keep this train rolling toward a solution of equality, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's key, isn't it? Is yes, we want to heal and we want to feel, you know, feel like we can move past it, but at the same time, we don't want to lose sight of why it's happening and what needs to change to improve it. Right. I did have one very last question for you, because it's something that I've struggled with a little bit, and perhaps, you know, a lot of DoubleClutch listeners, people who listen to this podcast, they might be feeling similar as well. But there are a lot of you know, non-Black allies for the Black community. You know, people want to help, and, you know, but what is it that we can do to, you know, help raise the profile of what Black people are going through in the United States?
Just keep sharing, keep caring, keep talking about it, keep bringing it up. Like I could tell you, in 4 months, in 4 months, people in mass media probably won't be talking about it. Just like people aren't still talking about Trayvon Martin. Only when another person dies, then they bring up Trayvon Martin, like in the media. So we just have to keep on talking about it and letting them know that this is something that we're not going to settle for. And when I mean we, I mean society, because we're talking about making this better for everyone. We're talking about making this better for everyone. It's, I don't want to be equal just because of me. I want to be equal because it's the right thing to do. And I want to be equal for everybody that's seen as different than me. I want to let them know that they have value. And that's what I think that, should be talked about, should be talked about. So it's a lot of things that you can do. You can talk, you can, share, keep caring about it. Like, if you're in the U.S., you can vote on and you can vote on local levels and just make becomes a constant issue, and it can't be on deaf ears when we it can't be on deaf ears when we say, hey, I want to be treated equal, or hey, I'm I don't want to be killed by a law enforcement officer. And sometimes I feel that it is. And so I think this affects everybody, and it just has to keep on affecting everybody.
Yeah, well said. Okay, well, I think I've taken up enough of your time. I really appreciate you jumping on with this. It's obviously a very important topic, and personally, I'm not going to be letting it die anytime soon. I need to keep this conversation going. But, I do hope that we can move to a better place at some point, and we can, start talking about things that we love as well, the game of basketball being one of them. But until then, Coach, stay safe, stay healthy, and yeah, we'll see you very soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and you stay safe and healthy too.
Speak to you soon.
All right.
Thanks.